If you're training for high rocks and you're still dealing with things like tight hips or aching joints or maybe the same nagging injuries, no matter how hard you train, it's not because you're weak. It's because your brain doesn't trust your body. You've probably lost something called proprioception, which is your body's ability to feel and control where it is in space. And high rocks is just exposing that every time you run or lunge or hit the sled under fatigue. Most hybrid athletes are just pushing through that with more effort and more volume. But the truth is, guys, you can't outwork a shaky foundation. But again, you're not broken. You just haven't been taught how to train your nervous system. The part of you that actually decides whether to move freely or to tighten up in protection. And in this video, I'm going to show you the exact protocol that I personally use to train for the 2028 Olympics while running a demanding business. And more importantly, what I'll show you helps me do it without the nagging aches and little injuries that most high performers just think are part of the game. So if you want to crush your next high rocks without breaking down and unlock a body that performs under pressure and totally pain-free, then this video is going to be exactly what you need. What most hybrid athletes don't realize is that proprioception is kind of like your body's GPS. And it's what tells your brain where all your joints are in space every single second. But when you lose that, you're basically moving blind and your nervous system stops trusting your body. So that's when the muscles tighten and the joints get stiff and you just start compensating without even knowing it. And that's how the tightness becomes chronic and how the small misalignments spiral into full-blown injuries. So here's a really simple example. Let's say your pelvis isn't stable, then your nervous system is going to sense that as a threat, so it tightens up your hamstrings to protect you. It's not that there's anything really wrong with the hamstrings, it's just that they're overworking to make up for the fact that your deep core and your glutes aren't properly stabilizing the pelvis. So that's what compensation looks like. And the worst part about that is that most of this happens silently long before you ever even feel pain. And there's science on this too. So studies show that reduced proprioception is one of the biggest predictors of injury, especially in dynamic sports like your running and your high rep movements. And unfortunately, everything from sitting all day to training through injuries, all of that just dulls your proprioception even further. And so that's why things like foam rolling your quads or stretching your hip flexors just won't really cut it. Because if your nervous system just doesn't feel safe, then your body won't move freely. And so instead of trying to force mobility or grind through pain, you need to reset how your body and your brain communicate. And that's what I help athletic entrepreneurs and high performing professionals do every single day, because when you get this right, guys, the body just naturally starts moving better and recovering faster and performing without breaking down. So with that said, these are the 3 neuromuscular reset protocols I use to rebuild proprioception from the ground up and help my clients eliminate any nagging injuries that nothing else could solve. All right, the first part of this protocol is single leg stability, because about 50% of your high rocks race is going to be running, and running happens on one foot at a time, right? So if your single leg balance or your proprioception is even just slightly off, guys, then that's when your body starts compensating and you're going to subtly shift weight and just alter joint positions, and your body's going to tighten up to protect itself. And that might not seem like the biggest deal in the moment, but over the course of a full race or months of training, those small misfires are going to add up. And that's how the stiffness turns into pain, and pain turns into injury, and so forth. So here's a really simple way to check your proprioception right now. So you're going to kick off your shoes, you're going to stand on one leg with your eyes closed, and you're going to do that for 30 seconds. And you're going to see if you can do it without having to wobble and put your foot down on the ground to catch yourself. If you can't, then your body doesn't really feel fully confident on one leg, and high rocks is exposing that every time you run. The good news is that the test is also part of the fix, because training with your eyes closed forces your nervous system to actually stop relying on vision and instead rebuild full body awareness from the ground up. So here's a progression that I use with all my clients. So we'll have them start off with a 30-second single leg stand, again, eyes closed, and we'll just kind of work on that, get really comfortable there. Then we'll maybe open their eyes, have them swap this weight back and forth, and then eventually again close the eyes, and then we'll get into a lunge swap. So we'll get here in this lunge position, same thing, maybe open eyes at first and then close the eyes, and then you can get into actual movements where you're going up and down with the eyes closed. So each step in that progression is going to train your nervous system to actually feel more grounded and rebuild that trust in your joints, that in the joints that take the most impact. And one of my clients, Leon, knows this all too well because he was dealing with left ankle and knee pain. And within just 2 weeks of focusing on this exact progression, his knee pain totally went away for the first time in years. And it's because once you really feel the ground again, your body is able to actually feel where it is in space, then you no longer need to tense up to protect yourself. The second part of the protocol is eccentric isometrics. And guys, this one is so powerful, so stick with me here. It's a method that retrains your body to move the way that it was just designed to move. And it clears up the noise between your brain and your muscles, so you naturally just correct faulty patterns without needing to overthink it or be some biomechanical or anatomical genius. Unfortunately, a lot of hybrid athletes I see and high performers are just overly focused on the push of a movement, on the concentric part of a movement, that they don't really ever spend much time in the eccentric or the lowering phase of a movement. And they just kind of bounce through their reps, bouncing it off their chest and just using all this momentum to get through their reps. But that's kind of like trying to fire a slingshot without pulling it back precisely. So you can think of the eccentric kind of like coiling a spring. And then the isometric is the hold at the bottom with full tension. And when you nail those two phases, then the launch or the concentric becomes faster and smoother and even safer on your joints just automatically. And this is where your body starts to self-correct, guys, because your nervous system feels that stretch and it senses your alignment and it begins making these subtle little adjustments, firing the right muscles and turning off the wrong ones. And it essentially just restores joint position and control, recalibrating how you move under load. It's kind of like updating the software of your movement system in real time. And that's why I have my clients do 2 to 3 eccentric, at least 2 to 3 eccentric isometric focus workouts every single week that are just built around foundational movements like your split squats, your RDLs, overhead presses, things like that, using a slow eccentric down to the bottom, maybe like 5 seconds, a pause at the bottom, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. Again, it depends. And as simple as it sounds, guys, this stuff works. I mean, one of my clients, Kakura, is huge into grappling sports, and he came to me after dealing with chronic shoulder dislocations and instability for the last literally a decade. And he'd done all the typical physio stuff. He'd done the banded external rotations and the dumbbell work and all of that. But none of it really translated when it actually came time to move dynamically. And so he basically had to shift his whole grappling style to just rely on one arm. But we rebuilt his foundation using eccentric isometrics and just versions of really simple patterns. And within weeks, he was finally feeling where his shoulder should be in space. And the right muscles naturally started kicking in, and it just felt reflexive to be able to stabilize. And now he's not just pain-free, but he's back to training confidently again and using both arms after years of having to play it safe on the mat. Because when you give your nervous system clean input, guys, your body just starts fixing itself. The third and final piece of this that's going to bring everything together is breath focused core work, because your breathing muscles are your core muscles. They stabilize your posture and absorb force and keep you controlled under pressure. And what I see is that most people, when they're training core, will just hold their breath and not really breathe with any intention. And that essentially means that they're missing out on the full functionality of the core. And they're just leaking pressure the moment things get intense. And when you leak pressure, you lose control. And that's where the body starts to compensate through the low back, the hips, or the neck, and so on. And that's where pain creeps in. So you need to think about your core like a canister. And it's only solid when pressure is distributed evenly in all directions. And I'll put some diagrams up as I'm speaking here. So if you lose pressure at any point, whether it be at your spine, your pelvis, or your ribs, the whole system collapses. And that's why I actually use this principle as an assessment tool with my clients. So where I can see them leaking pressure during a simple core exercise, telling them to breathe, inhale and exhale, that's going to tell me exactly what parts of their foundation are unstable. And the fix is simple. Once they learn how to just manage pressure correctly in the right areas, then their issues like low back pain or shoulder blade pain or maybe even hip tension, all those things just disappear. No complex rehab drills and nothing like that, just better awareness and control. So how do you build that? You train your breath into your core. So I'll do a little demo here. So basically, you want to start with a full exhale through your nose or mouth, and you're going to feel your rib cage compress 360 degrees around. So the front, the back, the sides, you want to feel everything kind of wrap around your spine and shrink. And then you're going to inhale slowly through the nose, but you're going to keep that same tension from your exhale. So you should feel that pressure build up into your upper back, your chest, your belly, not too much into the belly, but really making sure that the rib cage expands. And you really don't want to let the stomach go. So what I see a lot of the time is that people build this nice tension on the exhale, and I'll tell them to inhale, and then the core just checks out. So you can practice this in a multitude of different movements. So one of my favorites is the bear crawl. So you just get down on all fours, and then you're gonna slightly lift up the knees, and then you're gonna just practice those exhales and inhales again, expanding and contracting the rib cage. And this is gonna teach you and your nervous system how to manage pressure and tension reflexively, even under fatigue and speed and load that you're gonna see in your high rocks, so that you just naturally have a strong core and a very solid platform to do whatever dynamic movements off of. So this, guys, is the difference between just doing core and actually building a body that stays composed when it counts. All right, guys, so High Rocks is obviously one of the most demanding hybrid events out there. And sure, grit and fitness matter, but they're not the full story. If you look at the top athletes in the sport, the ones who move fluidly and stay mostly injury free and recover faster than everyone else, they're not just fitter, they have elite structure and body control and nervous system efficiency. And some of them, of course, were gifted with it, but others built it, whether intentionally or not. And most competitors, they're just leaking energy through faulty mechanics and missing stability and unaddressed imbalances. The good news about that is that structure can be rebuilt. And once it is, your body is going to stop fighting itself and it's going to start performing the way that you know it can. And so if this resonated and you want to implement these same protocols into your training, then you can apply to work with us inside Mind Your Movement, where we coach the same exact performance systems that I personally use to train at an Olympic level without my body breaking down, and doing that while scaling a demanding business. So when you apply, you will get a performance audit with one of my trusted advisors, and they're going to help you identify where your breakdowns are coming from, and what you can start doing differently today. And no pressure, just real support, real insight, and a clearer path forward. So if you're ready to build a body that performs under pressure, then click the link, apply now, and let's get to work. And lastly, remember, no matter where you are in your journey, keep moving with intention.